Hello and welcome, or welcome back. I'm Stephen.
I'm Sam.
Yeah, I'm joined again by my brother Sam. This is not the episode you were expecting. If you were expecting anything at all, you were probably expecting my thoughts on the Christopher Eccleston story, Dalek. That will come, but I've been ill lately. I've had one of these horrible winter bugs that's going around. So, although I've watched and prepared for the material, I haven't actually recorded the piece yet. But a little while ago, Sam suggested that it might be fun, and he's regretting it now, but he suggested it might be fun to watch K9 and Company and talk about it. And we actually watched it a couple of nights ago. We've had a day and a half to digest what we saw. And we actually, just one of these curious things, we actually watched it on the 41st anniversary of the digital broadcast. So, how do you feel about it now?
Well, I feel obviously you can't do your song today.
No hat.
I feel we ought to at least provide some sort of musical stimulus, which I think.
Okay, well, if you do the tune, and I'll do the vocal.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Da 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 da.
K9.
That's more or less it. So.
K9.
Okay. If we flag at any point. Stephen will say K9, and it's fairly possible we might flag at any point. You know what? I thought this would be an entertaining thing to do as a Christmas special. We have a poinsettia behind the head, but I find myself feeling alternately like slightly indulgent towards it, possibly because we were like kind of sitting down watching it more or less on the night it was intended to be watched. Christmas, the expectations aren't high, I guess. But there's kind of a, watching it, there's a sort of very, very palpable sense from everyone involved, I think, of will this do? And that's kind of, well, more or less it will. But as the basis for the series, I'm not entirely sure. What do you think?
Well, whether it was intended to be watched on the 28th is up for debate because it's actually set at the solstice. So whether it was originally planned to be broadcast slightly earlier, I don't know. I think it maybe loses a little bit of something by being shown a week after the solstice, when it's all about the solstice. But the main thing, well, there's two main things, and one of these nobody would be aware of at the time. But of course, I've got the Sarah Jane Adventures in mind when I watch it, and I'm thinking about what works, what doesn't work, and what we established. Well, there's two questions. Question one. Can K9 be the lead in a show? No. And it has been tried elsewhere, but no, he can't. Can Sarah Jane Smith, played by Elisabeth Sladen, carry a show? Yes. So what started out as K9 and Company, 20, however many years later, became the Sarah Jane Adventures, and largely without K9 even for the first series. So, and also she's got a sort of teenage sidekick, which was later built on much more. When she had 3 in the Sarah Jane Adventures at any one time. So there's that, but the rest of it is a very, very weird story to try and open a new show on. Because a lot of people would have probably got into it expecting it to be a bit more sci-fi than it was, but it's all about black magic and, well, not exactly devil worship. It's not the devil. It's Hecate, isn't it? But
and market gardening.
And there's lots of market gardening. Yeah, there's 2 rival market gardening firms. And they've had a couple of bad years, so they're all praying to this being for better conditions or whatever. And suddenly, after 90 years without a human sacrifice, suddenly decide they need one for reasons which aren't entirely clear.
Fulfill that Sainsbury's contract.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it isn't the most promising and obvious setting for a kids' TV show, is it? Like investigating devil worshippers out of the market gardening business. It's not one of the things you would say they kind of nailed in terms of the format.
Let's have a word about as you say, outstanding. Let's have weren't outstanding, but a word about some of the prominent guest characters, shall we? Where do you want to start on that?
Well, where to start? I can't not start with the most sinister, innocent people that have ever been put on a Doctor Who TV show. I think they're tremendous. The most sort of dastardly invitation to dinner that you ever heard. Marvellous.
Juno Baker.
Mm.
And her husband Howard, who she keeps telling us has a lot of influence in the village.
Yeah.
Which we're obviously we've got our own conclusions about what kind of influence that might be.
Yeah.
But it's called away suddenly from that party, and we never know why.
No, just to be loosely sinister. But yes, will she come? She'll come for dinner. Yes, marvellous. I'll get the class. I don't know. It's very odd. They have a lovely Christmas dinner afterwards, and it's very odd.
And even when they're revealed to be the only innocent people in the village, she's still talking in the same sinister way. It's
It's odd. And I said yes, oddly reminiscent of a Stephen Fry character on a bit of Flying Lolly on the old Vox Pops bits. I couldn't quite nail that, but at the time that was.
Would Flying Lolly have come slightly after 80?
I don't think there's an influence. I think it's just a sheer serendipitous chance. I think we should. There's also there's Commander Pollock, who's kind of bluff and obviously dodgy. And there's a wonderful scene where they do some of the slowest walking whilst speaking dialogue I've ever seen. They go about a yard and a half from the greenhouse with about, 30 yards worth of dialogue. It's tremendous. It's just something.
Well, and of course, Commander Pollock was played by Bill Fraser, who, legend has it, he appeared in the previous season of Doctor Who as General Grugger in Meglos. And legend has it, he took that part only on the condition that his character got to kick K9 because he wanted to be the most unpopular, hated villain in Doctor Who. And he must have loved it so much he's back for the second go with K9.
Less notably villainous, apart from at the end when he's unconscious and obviously a villain, I suppose.
And I think the other great character we ought to touch on is Lily Gregson, the postmistress.
Yeah, who's moved in from somewhere in the southwest. Has a long history in the village, but not the same accent as anybody else who lives there.
No. And in fact, we don't worry about spoilers for 40-odd-year-old thing on here, but she is ultimately the main villain. She's the head of the cult. And now, I can say who else is in the cult, but everybody else is in the cult. The police are in the cult. The local newspaper editor, Mr. Tobias, is in the cult. And what's Commander Pollock's sidekick called and his son? I forgot the names now. George, and what's the son?
Peter,
yes. Peter's very reluctant to get into any sort of trouble because he's got a suspended prison sentence already hanging over him for, I can't remember why, was it burglary or something? I don't know, but anyway, that's sort of used as influence power over him by the others, but it's very bad parenting, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Should we say it's not in it much, but should we say something about Aunt Lavinia, who may or may not, if it had gone to series, have become a regular?
Go for it. If you have thoughts.
She, firstly, how easy or not do you buy into the fact that she's Sarah Jane's aunt?
Not even remotely.
I mean, she has been mentioned once before in Doctor Who, because that's when we first meet Sarah. Sarah is impersonating her to get into that, what do you call it? That scientific gathering, where the brigadiers got all the scientists together to protect them from being abducted. But we never really hear from her again since. We do get more back there much later on in the Sarah Jane adventures. We know what happened to Sarah Jane's mum and dad later on. We find out how they died, but when she was young. But Aunt Lavinia just didn't seem to quite fit in with Sarah Jane. Of course, they don't actually, apart from the telephone, they have no scenes together, so we don't know what the chemistry would have been like if it had got to series.
She may just have gone missing every week, leaving them to explore different covens.
Yes, that's just something Sam touched on, which hadn't even occurred to me when we finished watching it, about what a series would have looked like. I thought, well, surely we'd have to bring in more sci-fi elements, and Sam said, well, maybe they were just planning on going down the country busting witchcraft covens.
There's a bit left hanging right at the end where the young fella...
Vendon.
Yeah, thank you, yes. Who just sort of says, must be lots of these around the country. It's like sacrificing loads of people. You're thinking, well, you could go that way if you want to. But I don't think it would have been... Well, I mean, it may well have gone to series, who knows?
No.
Had there not been a change of controller.
Before we fit... Oh, of course, on behind the scenes, the other thing you mentioned was the rather excessive number of script editors for this little production.
For the quality of the script, it's hard to see.
Now, was it one too many, or should have brought in a third one to tidy things up?
I'm not sure it was savable. As I say, will this do? And at Christmas, probably it will. It's all that rather neatly in a kind of slightly, reputable company, stuff back as a Christie kind of a way, and with the dog that shoots you.
And I think before we finish, the elephant in the room. This is K9 and Company, and there's one character we've not really hardly spoken about. K9. So,
in fact, one thing I haven't said, you did talk before about Elisabeth Sladen, but the absolute total commitment she brings to this part, even in this thing, just to manage. But yes, K9. So I was trying to work out what K9 actually does, and I think he comes out of a box, he analyses some soil, he hides in a cupboard, and he shoots a couple of people. And that's about as active as he gets.
Yeah,
about 50 minutes.
Sarah gets him to plan the optimum route to get to all 8 churches in the quickest possible time, and it's only a minute to spare even then.
T-figured sat nav.
Yeah.
With live traffic updates. So that's pretty good.
And when you see him, he's in the back seat of the car behind her, and you think, well, if she has to brake very suddenly, he's going to go right into the back of her seat. That's not going to go well.
It's not. It must be quite heavy, and has a nuclear battery, as we also established. The only other thing I think is that if people haven't seen this televisual feast, as Bernard Crims would have said in Fawlty Towers, then just go and just watch the opening sequence. Just watch the opening credits. They are on YouTube. They are amazing. You'll get a sense of kind of the action involved in the show had it gone to series, and the way that K9 would have been deployed as a action dog hero thing.
Yeah. But it's just an interesting piece, a glimpse of what could have been, but never quite was. And if it had been, we probably wouldn't have got the Sarah Jane Adventures later, which are much... Although Sarah Jane Adventures are aimed mostly at children, whereas I think K9 Company's aimed at the whole family audience, same family audience as Doctor Who was at the time. I think Sarah Jane Adventures is undoubtedly a superior product, both in terms of script. Obviously, production values have increased, but certainly... Have you seen all of those, or just a few?
Probably about half.
Yeah. Enough to know it's... Well, do you agree with me it's a superior product?
Yeah. They managed to solve the problem slightly of having a Doctor Who series without Doctor Who in the middle, without a big Doctor Who shaped hole in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps. Whereas...
Yeah. So, before we finish, is there anything else either of us have missed?
We got 50 minutes out of this. I'm astonished.
I know. I thought we'd struggle to fill 10, but we're going to run to 15 and possibly.
It's only like 35 minutes left of the show.
Yeah. So, have we missed anything?
I can't imagine we missed anything important. By definition.
No, except I don't know what we're going to do next Christmas. Behind the scenes, because you might wonder why I raised my finger. My mum just came in and showed me this because we're getting ready to have our lunch, and I think we've exhausted this to death, haven't we?
Production values, it's just torn. It's even cut with scissors. It's in keeping.
That was a higher budget moment than a lot of the K9 Company episode was. So I don't know what we're going to talk about next Christmas, but I'm sure we'll find something. But can Mum put the pasta on?
She can if she wants.
Yes, Mum can put. Okay, well we'll say goodbye now.
All right. Say goodbye.
Okay, and I'll see you next time for Dalek, and Sam will see you next time whenever one of his stories comes up. So, bye.
Bye bye. Da 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 da.
K9.